Hey everybody, I'm glad that you all are watching this video if you are. I am going to be addressing a topic I didn't kind of foresee at the time that I recorded the video on corporate election in Ephesians 1. But I can't not respond to this. So, as many of you know, and I'm not going to I'm not going to labor over this explanation of the background for all of this, because once we get started, people are going to know, if they're watching this video, right away what the context of this video is. Right. So a few months ago, in a limited atonement debate, a debate over limited atonement, Jason Breda presented this sort of new thesis by this guy who wrote a book like a decade ago, Brent Lay or Lee, something like that, on Romans, a new way of kind of conceptualizing the audience of Romans, and I think the purpose of Romans, and he calls it two-part Romans. The first half of Romans is to the Jewish Christians in Rome, and the second half is to the Gentile Christians in Rome. There's already a problem with that, in my opinion, because there is kind of a half to Romans. You have the teaching half, which goes up through chapter 11, and then the paranetic half, which goes from 12 to 16. I'm being general here when I say that. Not all of 12 through 16 is paranetic, and not all 1 through 11 is teaching, in the sense of teaching theology, in the indicative mood. It's called pointing things out, being in the declarative mood. That's already a point against this in my book, that you have application of earlier teachings for Gentiles, but that earlier teaching was written to Jews. That just, it doesn't really work with me. So I just have to respond to this. I just have to kind of put my voice out there and get my thoughts out there and collect my voice, collect my thoughts, and voice my opinion. And so Jason Breda, he introduced this in the Romans debate, and James White, he's not a good faith interlocutor. Leighton Flowers said this. I agree. I used to be a fan of James White. He's not a good faith interlocutor. This is not something to bring up in a debate with James White. He's going to derail the debate and focus heavily on it, and not really try to understand it, but sort of marginalize, minimalize it, and move on from it, from the view, and kind of parade about how he won the debate. And so after the debate, Jason Breda, or during the debate, Jason Breda, I think, maybe it was just after, promised to release videos on this, and he has started doing that. He's released 2 parts now. The second part was a little bit confusing to me. I just trying to understand the direction it's going in, the trajectory of it. I'll watch the next ones as they come out. The first part intrigued me for a little bit until I realized it just doesn't work with the text. Right, so he pointed out to 2 important verses in the opening to Romans. It's sort of opening. He pointed out verse 13 and verse 6, and this thing called an ambiguous antecedent. Right, so my thesis here, my position I'm taking, is that the antecedent is not as ambiguous as Breda made it out to be, and that it's very clear in both of those verses that Paul is addressing Gentiles. If only Gentiles. At least Gentiles. At least he's addressing Jews and Gentiles. But you can make a case he's just addressing Gentiles. That doesn't mean he's not addressing Jews anywhere else in the letter. He clearly does, like in chapter 7, where he says, I'm speaking to you under the law. And so he very clearly, in chapter 2, verse 17, if you call yourself a Jew. But here, in chapter 1, in verse 6 and verse 13, he is addressing Gentiles. And we're going to show that here now. So, he started in verse 13, and he makes much ado about this big thing called an ambiguous antecedent, right? So, just going to trace these pronouns here, right? So, I may reap some harvest among you. Well, who's the you? Well, let's back up. Let's go back earlier in the text and see if we can't find it. that I have often intended to come to you. Okay, well, here is this you the same? It looks to be the same. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers. Oh, well, they're brothers, so they're Christians, right? Brothers and sisters. Okay, so he's talking to believers, right? But he wants to be mutually encouraged by their faith, right? Yours and mine. So there's that same you. He's longed to see you, that he may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. And so he's really, really talking to this, really focused on this you, right? He wants to come to the you. He doesn't cease to mention the you in the prayers. He thanks his God through Jesus Christ for all of the you, because the you's faith is proclaimed in all the world. And he wishes grace to them. Now let's go to verse 7. To all those in Rome. All right. So all those in Rome, not just all those in Rome, it's the loved by God and called to be saints, those in Rome. That's who he's talking to, right? That sounds to me a whole lot like Jewish and Gentile Christians in Rome, or just Christians in Rome, which may happen to be Jewish or Gentile or both. Well, let's back up even more here. Including you, who are called to belong to Jesus Christ, through whom we have received a grace and apostleship to bring about the obedience of faith for the sake of his name among all the nations, including you. So, it's among all the nations, including you. I need to ask yourself, is the you included in the nations? Is the you, let me say it this way, part of the nations? You bet, because it is explicit in the English text, including you. If you want to look at the Greek, it's over here on the left. It's a little bit more explicit. En hois este kai humes, in whom you also called of Jesus Christ. In whom you are also called of Jesus Christ. So, among those, what's the antecedent of those? It highlights the who, but that's not really right. Because it's plural dative masculine, or neuter, sorry. So it's referring back to a neuter plural dative, which is nations. So, in whom, in which, in this group, that is the nations, right? So if you don't know, Greek has gender, it has it's in a highly inflected language, so it has things called case endings, right? We don't know these, but it's in the dative form, which is similar to, but not coterminous with, our indirect object. So like if I said, I hit the ball is the direct object of hit. But if I hit the ball to Bob is not the direct object, but it is an object. It's called the indirect object. That is close to, but not the same as, the dative case in Greek. Right? So it is this dative case. It's plural, so it's a group, and it's neuter gender, grammatical gender. So for us to find an antecedent to hois, right? We would look for a neuter plural dative noun that it's referring to. And we have one. Notice the ending here. Tois. Sorry, y'all. Tois. It's the same ending as hois. So ethnisen. Tois ethnisen. Right? This is a neuter plural dative noun. Nations. The you is included in this. It is literally in them. You are called of Jesus Christ, among whom you also are called of Jesus Christ. So Paul is desiring to bring about the obedience of faith for his sake in all the nations, among all those in the nations. So the you is part of that group, right? Now, I'm going to show you something here. When we move down to verse 13, right, it's the same you, right? We think we've established that, or at least I try to establish that by backing up from verse 13. Paul says, I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that I've often intended to come to you, those in Rome, those ethnoi in Rome that are saints. He's been prevented. In order that I might reap some harvest among you, as well as among the rest of the Gentiles. Now, what Jason Breda says is that the kai here means in addition to. Right? Ignore its highlighting but. That's not it. That this is an addition to the rest of the Gentiles, right? In addition to the Gentiles, I wish to reap some harvest among you Jewish Christians. That doesn't work here. That doesn't work. Now, if it just said, as well as among the Gentiles, the ethnoi, he might have something. But the problem is it doesn't say that. It says among the rest of the Gentiles. So look at the word over here. It's the ethnocen. It is the same exact word. Everything. The same exact shape. Tois ethnocen. Tois loipois ethnocen. It is in a neuter plural dative form. It's the same word. So this is like probably the only like Greek thing that I need to really point out for this video. That the word for Gentiles and nations is the same word. Ethnos. That's the nominative neuter singular form of it. The neuter singular nominative. The neuter nominative singular form of ethnocen is ethnos. Right. So ethnos is the same word underlying the Gentile and nation. They used interchangeably, nation and Gentile, those words, to translate them. You have to look at the context to kind of see what's going on. But we've already established in verse 6 that the you is part of the ethnos. And not only that, Paul also says, also among the rest of the ethnos. So we have the loipos ethnos, and this is dative, but it has a very genitive-like flavor to it. And what I mean by that is we kind of mirror the genitive in English by putting the word of there, the rest of the Gentiles. The important thing here for this is the rest is part of the whole, the Gentiles, right? So, what's the whole? The ethnos. What's the part? The loipois. So, where's the other part at in the context, right? So, where's the rest? Where's the other rest? We have one rest, the rest of the Gentiles. Where's the other rest? It's the you. The you is the other rest of. Paul wants to seek harvest among the Gentile Christians in Rome as well as the rest of the Gentiles. And he goes even on to give an explanation for why this is in 14 and 15. 14 is linked to 13 with ascendaton, which is it's unmarked, but he says, I am under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to the wise and to the foolish. So he is the apostle to the Gentiles, whereas Peter is the apostle to the Jews. So Paul's under obligation to the Greeks, to the barbarians, both to those educated, both to those not educated. So, in this way, Paul is also eager to preach the gospel to you also, in addition to Greeks and barbarians, those who are in Rome. Those are the rest of the Gentiles. Greeks and barbarians, wise and foolish, those are the loipois ethnocen, and the other rest is those in Rome. So if Breda is going to say that this is Gentiles, like actual Gentiles, like non-Jewish people, the you has to also be Gentile Christians in Rome. They're linked. They're together. They make up the ethnoi, the loipois, which is the Greeks, the barbarians, the wise, the foolish, and the other part is the Gentile Christians in Rome. Right, so I'm not going to be as much of a pearl clutcher as James White is in this debate, and say that, look, he makes a mockery of the text, he cuts it into pieces, he turns it upside down, he's going all crazy because he wants to get past Calvinism and find an excuse for his rebellion against God's word. Like, James White says things like that all the time. I'm not going to say that. I think Jason Breda is, and if it's like Breda or Breda, I'm sorry. I just hear it Breda a lot. So, Breda's a good guy, right? He seems like a really chill guy. He's somebody it would be really cool to hang out with and just talk to about theology. He seems like he's a nice guy. He doesn't seem like he's like that confrontational. It seems like he's more wanting to have a discussion. And maybe, like, in some crazy world, this would actually spark that discussion with me and him. That would be kind of fun. I would enjoy that. So, again, the point is, I'm not going as far as James White. But as a non-Calvinist, this is a step too far for me. There are other and better ways of dealing with Calvinist interpretations of the text that are more textually sound than this one. If this is a plane, Breda never got off the ground.